A fascinating combination of combative and stoic heroism, with a priestly bearing, conferred on the Indian of the plains and forest a sort of majesty. Hence the powerfully original and irreplaceable beauty that is associated with the red man, and contributes to his prestige as a warrior and as a martyr. Like the Japanese of the time of the samurai, the Red Indian was in the deepest sense an artist in the outward manifestation of his personality. Apart from the fact that his life was a ceaseless sporting with suffering and death, the Indian knew how to impart to the spiritual style an aesthetic adornment unsurpassable in its expressiveness. Rock-like, the Indian of former times reposed in his own being, his own personality, ready to translate it into action with the impetuosity of lightning, but at the same time he remained humble before the great mystery, whose message, he knew, could always be discerned in the nature around him. Virgin nature is at one with holy poverty and also with spiritual childlikeness. She is an open book containing an inexhaustible teaching of truth and beauty. Close to virgin nature, who knows neither agitation nor falsehood, he has the hope of remaining contemplative like nature herself. In order to fully understand the abruptness of the breakup of the Red Indian race, one must take account of the fact that this race had lived for thousands of years in a kind of paradise that was practically speaking without limits. The Indians of the West were still living under such conditions at the beginning of the 19th century. Theirs was a rugged paradise, to be sure, but one that provided an environment full of grandeur and of a sacred character, comparable in many respects with the northern parts of Europe before the coming of the Romans. The Indians identified themselves spiritually and humanly with this untouched nature, and accordingly accepted all her laws. But, as time went on, and concordantly with the development of the Iron Age, in which passions predominate and wisdom disappears, abuses began to arise with increasing frequency. The privileged situation of the Indians, on the fringe of history and of its crushing urban civilizations, had inevitably to come to an end. There is nothing surprising in the fact that this disintegration of a paradise, which had in a certain sense grown old, coincided with modern times. Nevertheless, it is abundantly clear that this account of the situation, in terms of its fatality alone, is one-sided and cannot extenuate or excuse the villainies of which the Indian has been a victim to during several centuries. Apologists for the white invasion and its consequences are only too ready to argue that all peoples in all ages have committed acts of violence. Violence, yes, but not necessarily acts of baseness, perpetrated, what is more, in the name of liberty, equality, fraternity, civilization, progress, and the rights of man. The conscious, calculated, methodical, official, and by no means anonymous destruction of the red race, its traditions and culture, in North America and partially also in South America, far from having been an unavoidable process, and as such possibly excusable in the name of natural laws, provided one does not claim to have outgrown those laws, thanks to civilization. This destruction, it must be said, certainly remains one of the greatest crimes and most blatant cases of vandalism in human history. That said, there remains the inescapable aspect of things, the aspect of fatality. This aspect of the world does not prevent things from being what they are. At its own level, evil remains evil. The nature of evil, and not its inevitability, calls for its condemnation. If only because the world is not God, one must be resigned to the existence of error, yet should never accept it. But beyond earthly destructions, there is the indestructible. Every form you see, says Rumi, has its archetype in the divine world, beyond space. If the form perishes, what matter, since its heavenly model is indestructible? Every beautiful form you have seen, every meaningful word you have heard, be not sorrowful because all this must vanish, for it is not really thus. The divine spring is immortal, and its flow gives water without cease. Since neither the one nor the other can be stopped, wherefore do you lament? From the first moment when you entered this world of existence, a ladder was placed before you.